The white liberal is the most dangerous thing in the Western Hemisphere.
I do think they would probably disagree with your characterization.
Negro, you come from Africa. Call yourself an African.
What about Bernie? I mean, he doesn't even say it's genocide.
If Israel says jump, they say how high.
You're kind of insinuating that he's kind of a DNC plant.
AOC Pelosi.
It's been under Democrats that we've seen PG&E start on average 400 plus fires per year.
So it went Obama, Biden, and Trump's third.
Biden was chasing the deportation records that had been set by Obama.
Do you love the United States of America?
He said, you're going to be the first Muslim president of the United States of America.
All right, so we have a very special episode today, a great show, because sitting across from us is Butch Ware. He is running for governor of California, representing the Green Party.
Yes, indeed.
He is a professor at UCSB. He's an author, musician, and we're just so thankful that you are spending some time with us.
I wouldn't have missed it for the world. I mean, I did a great interview, a really enjoyable interview for me with James. When I saw you guys were launching a new project, I was like, bro, sign me up.
I love it.
Really
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Danny, and I'm glad to get in on the ground floor of this show that you guys are launching. Yeah.
So I did some research on you yesterday, and I saw that at age 14, very young age, you dedicated your life to Islam and became a Muslim.
True.
That's a very adult thing to do at such a young age. And so I was just curious a little bit about your upbringing, what led you on a spiritual path 10, 15 years before most people kind of have that, experience.
Yeah. So I think that I was actually 15 when I took my Shahada. And it was it was a kind of transformative moment in my life for sure. So what happened was I read the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Okay.
And I read that book cover to cover in one night.
Wow.
I could not
Hooked.
hooked. I couldn't put it down. I can still see myself going from the bed to the floor, back to the bed, because that book was touching deep recesses inside my soul. And the reason was that Malcolm was really, really honest about how dark some of the places that he had been in his life actually were, right? He talked about hustling. He talked about being in and out of foster care. He talked about his father, essentially being lynched by white supremacists. And I had seen a lot of the dark side of the United States of America, a lot of those same pain points. My father was a locksmith with a 6th grade education and a hustler. That's how he made ends meet. My mother was 15 years old, pregnant with me, and told by her high school guidance counselor that she should abort the child because she was pregnant by a black man. This was Washington, D.C. in 1973.
Wow.
They told her that she would be strung out on heroin and turning tricks by the time she was 17 if she had the baby.
Wow.
And so I came in up against a lot of the things that Malcolm was writing about and grew up in extreme poverty in D.C. I mean, we didn't live at the same street address for a calendar year consecutively until I turned 9 years old.
For a calendar year till you turn 9, just move.
One apartment, eviction, staying with relatives, couch surfing, battered women's shelter, dad's locksmith van, sleeping on the couches of relatives, homeless functionally. And so to return back to that moment when I was 15, Malcolm made a lot of things make sense. And I wanted what Malcolm had at the end of that book. Because what Malcolm had at the end of that book was a kind of complete liberation from all of his inner demons, all of his internal oppressors, and all of the external oppressors. Like the things that had been holding him down, he was speaking out against, and he was still reaching me from beyond the grave. And so I literally went the next day to my school library and I checked out an English translation of the Quran. Because if it had been good enough for Malcolm, it was good enough for me. I read that cover to cover the next night. So I literally had been up for 2 straight days, and I fell asleep and slept through school the next day. So I missed school. And I told my mom when she got home from work, I said, Mom, I'm Muslim.
And what was that reaction?
She wanted to hear more about it, and I told her about my reading. I said, I've been reading. I need to go to a mosque. I need 2 Muslim witnesses so that I can make my shahada. And she's like, That's fine, dear, but it's gonna have to wait till the weekend because I have work.
Yeah.
She was very supportive. Because she was somebody that She was raised Catholic. You know, she's still a practicing Catholic to this day. She used to take us to Unitarian churches, different kind of churches when we were kids. For her, she was always saying God is big enough for all of us.
I love that.
And everybody has to find their path, you know, to God. So she's still one of my closest friends, you know, and, you know, she was very supportive, you know, through that whole process. But that was, you know, kind of how my personal faith tradition, you know, like took its place in my life and in my heart. And it was also kind of my introduction into like the Black resistance political tradition, right? That's when I started to learn how to utilize some of that pain and trauma to kind of diagnose where we are as a society and then think about how to move. Because Malcolm was very, very astute in his read of American politics, which I'm sure, you know, will come up later in the conversation today.
Yeah. So that really was kind of your guiding light or direction, 15, 14 on, and then it's taken you, now here you are, you're a professor and speaking and.
Yeah, and I mean, literally, so one of the things that Malcolm said, and stay with me for a second, because this is gonna come out cryptic when I say it. So Malcolm said in a talk, he said, if a cat has kittens in an oven, that don't make them biscuits. And you're thinking like, what? And let me finish what he said and you'll understand the context. He said, you call yourself a Negro. He's talking to his audience in the 1960s. He said, show me Negro land on a map. Negro, you come from Africa. Call yourself an African. If a cat has kittens in an oven, that don't make them biscuits. So why did I study African history? Why is that the place that I, you know, got my PhD and learned about, you know, African resistance traditions and so forth? It was largely Malcolm pointing me saying, you know, well, what were Black folk doing before America happened to us?
Right.
And do you know anything about this past that has been taken away from you, right? And one of the things that I've been telling people in my university classes, in my community teaching, is that the only time an oppressor takes your history away from you, it's so that when they tell you who you are, you have no choice but to believe them. You don't know your own story. You don't know your own past. And even in all of my political endeavors, like it's a careful study of history that is informing all of the steps that I'm trying to make politically.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Please.
Because I wanted to ask you about that point because you brought up the African studies that you teach.
Yep.
And one of the big issues that you've been really vocal about is the issue of Israel and Palestine, right? So I'm wondering, like, how do you react? And we're going to get more into that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to understand, how do you react to, let's say, like white nationalists now aligning to the pro-Palestine cause? People like Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens. I don't think she would call herself a white nationalist at all, but
even though she is, but go ahead, continue.
But go ahead. But I'm saying, so what do you do in these situations, or do you embrace their support of this issue because they seem to be on the right side, or do you reject, or what do you do?
So again, Danny pointed this out, like Malcolm's teacher for me. So Malcolm was the reason why I knew how to read Palestinian liberation and anti-Zionism. So a lot of people just got unplugged after October 7th. I've been teaching about Palestinian liberation as a struggle against white supremacy for a couple of decades. And the reason is that Malcolm said that this is a white Jewish population. There's Jews of all colors from all around the world, but this is Ashkenazi Jews. This is a white Jewish population being empowered by white imperialists to move brown Arabs off their land. So all of the great Black radicals believed that the struggle against Zionism was part of an international struggle against Western imperialism and therefore white supremacy. And it wasn't just Malcolm. James Baldwin said, the state of Israel was not created for the salvation of the Jews. The state of Israel was created for the salvation of Western interests. He said that in 1979, Open Letter to the Born Again. Angela Davis, Toni Morrison, if you take the Africans into account, Thomas Sankara, Nelson Mandela, they all understood this as one of the battlegrounds in that broader struggle. So to return directly to your question, if you're reading Zionism as essentially a Eurocentric white supremacist movement, then you know where to position yourself as a Black person. And on October 11th, 2023, I organized the Black and Palestinian Solidarity event when people were scared to say Palestine, right? So now to your question, I am reticent to accept actual anti-Semites onto Team Free Palestine. because
And so you're calling Fuentes and
Fuentes for sure. You know, Tucker
Candace
Carlson, certainly. Candace Owens, she gives herself plausible deniability on certain aspects of anti-Semitism and white supremacy. But if you look at where their anchor ideologically has always been, right? I mean, Candace Owens has made her living by every single time a black person got killed by the police, she got on TV and said it's okay, that they should have that they should have complied. Like, she has been dealing death to black folks as an arm, as a rhetorical arm of the carceral state. That's how she made her money. And my dad, who I told you was not an educated man, but he was a very smart man, he told me when I was young, when he was watching a black Republican on TV, he turned to me and said, "Son, you'll never go broke telling white folks what they want to hear."
Interesting.
And Candace Owens has operationalized that perfectly, because she is this legitimizing black face on what are oftentimes very, very thinly veiled white supremacist discourse. So my point is to say, I understand that a lot of people are going to want to platform Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens. Nick Fuentes, that's inexcusable. But I mean, I can see why people, you know, might make arguments for the other two. But the thing is, if you understand the struggle against Zionism as a struggle against racism, then racists don't cure racism, right? Bringing racists onto an anti-racist project compromises your anti-racist project. Fred Hampton, great, you know, black revolutionary thinker, he said, we are not going to fight. He said, you don't fight fire with fire, you fight fire with water. We're not going to fight racism with racism. We're going to fight racism with solidarity.
And so,
although I do think they would probably disagree with your characterization of how you're framing this issue, probably in terms of like a racial thing. For them, you know, I think Candace Owens talks about it as like, hey, this is, you know, there's nothing,
sure,
we can't excuse bombing babies and this kind of thing. But I am wondering, like, in terms of why they are able to get, like, why do they have so much power? Is probably because, like, our politicians, they're just afraid to say, like, right now they have trouble even saying that this is a genocide. So then it leaves room for guys like Fuentes, Owens, Tucker to come in and fill that void to say, hey guys, you guys aren't saying it, so we'll say it.
Because the politicians on both sides of that aisle are wholly owned subsidiaries of AIPAC. I mean, they're.
What about Bernie? I mean, he doesn't even say it's genocide.
Bernie will not only will he not say that it's genocide, he, you know, sits there while people that raise Palestine flags at his events are arrested and carted off.
Really? That shocks me. I did not know that.
Absolutely. Footage has been circulating about that. He's saying, you know, 2 years into this genocide, Israel has a right to defend itself, when we know that from the standpoint of international law, an occupying power does not, in point of fact, have a right to defend itself against the people that it occupies. A right to defend yourself is for a state where Palestine has no recognition as a state. It's recognized as an occupation, and the occupied people have a right to resist their occupation up to and including arms. They have a mandate of care for people under occupation. They do not have a right to defend themselves against them. And that is what is supposed to dismantle occupation. But Bernie can't say that. AOC Pelosi can't say that. And the reason is that the Democrat Party is wholly owned by AIPAC just as much as the Republicans are. And it is telling that you have seen people like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I was just going to bring
Marjorie Taylor.
She's like the only one.
You know how lost the Democrats are when Marjorie Taylor Greene is getting out ahead of you, you know, on moral messaging on any issue. And this goes back also to Malcolm and how I've always read, you know, blue versus red. And this will also talk about why, you know, why I run green. Malcolm said in 1964. And just buckle up at home. Which camera do I look at? Malcolm said in 1964, the white liberal is the most dangerous thing in the Western Hemisphere. That's what he said. Now, when he said that in 1964, white conservatives were hanging black people from trees. White conservatives were turning dogs and fire hoses on protesters in Mississippi and in Alabama. White conservatives were putting bullets in the back of the head of white voting rights activists and burying them in shallow graves beside Mississippi roads. And Malcolm said what he said about white liberals.
And why? Why did he
exactly,
say that?
Because he had already said before, he said, the liberal is a fox. It bares its teeth. You think that it's smiling at you, but you are on the menu. The conservative is a wolf. When they bare their teeth, it's into a vicious snarl that leaves the black man with no illusion as to where he stands. And his argument was that an open enemy is less dangerous to you than a hidden enemy.
I agree with that. I definitely do. And sometimes I feel like the liberals try to put out a front that they're for one thing, and then it's the complete opposite. Where like I don't agree with everything the conservatives say, but I'm like, well, at least
they're honest. And I'll be perfectly blunt about this. In the 2024 presidential campaign, especially in the last month leading up to the election, we were drawing in two separate polls. We were drawing more voters away from Team Red than we were drawing away from Team Blue, because it was a lot easier to unplug people from original recipe MAGA than it was from blue MAGA, right? When you just make a case that says, you know what, y'all, we should not be using your tax dollars to incinerate children in other countries. It would be way better if we used that on fixing the fucking roads. Right. Right. Conservatives are like, yeah, why are my tax dollars being used to bomb kids, in other countries? Whereas liberals have this kind of inbuilt sense of superiority. They always feel like they're on the morally correct side of the question, virtue signaling. And the thing is I have to be careful about how I do this, because my beef is really not with liberals. It's with the Democratic leadership. Like, I actually think that most American voters aren't really ideological like that. I think that we get a lot of media messaging that comes from people who have vested interests in either Team Blue or Team Red. But most people are concerned about kind of common sense issues, and they tend to like affiliate with either blue or red just as a kind of cultural reflex, right? A conditioning, a programming. So I try not to bang on liberals as liberals, but bang on Democrats for what they do. And what the Democrats, told you in this, in the Biden genocide, is that they are absolutely willing to throw away what their voters are most concerned about in order to continue, a genocide, because they could have won the 2024 election.
You think so?
With Kamala?
With Kamala, even with Kamala, a very mediocre candidate. Yeah, so I have a special needs son, and I explained this one day to his aide, who wasn't somebody that's like particularly politically read in. So I had to like make this really, really simple. So this is going to come out in very simple form. I said the Democrats could probably win the election if they stop killing kids. Because Americans don't like their tax dollars being used to kill kids. Yeah,
especially at that time too, where you're seeing
tents incinerated, and all of our money being poured into one war,
right? You have Maui
where we're all
anywhere.
suffering here, and the money is just going out the window. And so I said, but the problem is that they're getting paid good money by AIPAC and by Raytheon and by Boeing and Lockheed Martin and General Dynamics and Northrop Grumman, the 5 weapons manufacturers that receive 60% of our national defense budget goes to those 5 companies. And our national defense budget is between $1 and $1.3 trillion.
Crazy.
Right? So they're getting paid, the Democrats are getting paid good money to keep killing kids. So they're going to keep right on killing kids, because they would rather lose the election and keep that donor base than win the election and risk that donor base.
Go ahead. No. I was just going to say, it just seems like the crux of everything that's wrong in our country and our culture and our society, that it's just profit over people. And so it makes me wonder, I feel like when you just look at your average American, your neighbor, your friend, they might be left, they might be right, they might be independent, but everybody really at the end of the day wants the same things. But then you have to choose, which side am I going to go to? We all want peace, clean water, clean food, clean air, clean, earth.
Yep.
But will we ever actually get the opportunity to elect someone
present?
You know what I mean? But okay, let's say you start to get like Mamdani, for example, a lot of popularity.
Sure.
Are they going to take you know, I hate to say it, but take him out, take you out. Like, how does this play out when you're going up against all this money and all this special interest?
Right, because I saw a post you recently made that was pretty critical of Mamdani.
Oh, yeah.
And you were, I mean, I didn't think you said these words exactly, but you were kind of insinuating that he's kind of a DNC plant.
I never said he was a DNC
I
plant.
said
Yeah, I know. Go ahead. No, hold on.
That's my interpretation of your post. Fair. It's like, oh, he's basically saying that he's gonna rug pull you at some point, and not be exactly. Even though if you disagree with his policies, you're saying he's not even going to implement those policies.
So my take on it is a little textured in the following way. So I didn't endorse, but I did publicly support and say that I was rooting for Zoran before the primary. And the reason for that principally is that we have a lot of mutual friends inside the Muslim community that know him well, and they vouch for his character personally, and they were supporting his campaign. And these are my folks in New York City, you know, with whom I have good relationships. Also, Mahmoud Mamdani, his father, was an academic mentor for me early in my career.
Oh, wow. He's at Columbia,
Columbia
right?
University. And I hosted him at the University of Michigan for an event. He hosted me at Columbia. We went out to dinners. He's somebody that, so I know that Zoran has absorbed like all of the kind of political training that matters most to me. So I believe in his sincerity. That's why I wouldn't say that he's a DNC plant. Even though I know a lot of people think that and are saying are saying that now, and that's fair. So, but what I did say is that when he says things like Israel has a right to exist, when he says things like I discourage people from using the term globalize the Intifada, and that what you can see is the reason why I could never run as a Democrat, even as a democratic socialist, and why it has to be independent, it has to be green, because wherever you are oriented ideologically, if you are wearing Team Blue's uniform, then that corporate wing of the party is eventually going to break you. And you have already seen him, you know, kind of mitigating his language under the influence of Bernie Sanders and AOC Pelosi, you know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And so my fear for Zoran is that he is going to continue to capitulate to that corporate wing of the party.
If he's not a puppet yet, he will be soon.
That's my fear. And I think that he should really realize and embrace his powers, that he was brought to the position of essentially putting the corporate Dems to their knees. And backpedaling now is going to lose him the voters that carried him in that primary. He thinks that he's playing it safe by playing nice with the corporate wing of the party. He is signing his political death sentence if he does that.
So I think James told me just before we started, because we have a bet going, I don't think Mamdani is going to win. He does. And Polymarket, the predictive betting app that, you know, predicted the election before any mainstream media did, have him at an 80% chance right now of winning. Do you think he's going to win?
I think that it's entirely in his hands whether he does or not.
But if he sticks with this,
if he continues to drift right, he's not going to win.
No, you don't think so?
No,
so you think
he's not going to win
Adams?
because what he's going to do is he's going to close the gap that separated him from those establishment Dems, and that's going to massively demotivate the people that helped him win. I'm going to tell you what my internal campaign, staff has been looking at.
Yeah,
we've been looking at the demographics of Zoran's win. The 5-year age range that had the highest voter turnout in the New York City mayoral primary was the 18 to 24 demographic.
That's how he won, right?
That's how he won.
Yeah.
And the point is that those folks, you know how they feel about Palestinian liberation. Those folks, they checked out of capitalism, 10 years ago when it became clear that nobody's going to be able to buy a house because the billionaires are going to have all of them.
Well,
right?
Yeah, and isn't it that part because that generation, 18 to 24, the economy is so bad, their future is so bad, the American dream is so out of grasp for these people. Yep. They're having to buy groceries on Klarna. They're having to finance their pizzas that they're like, you know what?
Bro, you got to put a pizza on layaway. Times is rough. Times is rough.
Right. So like for them, they're probably open to the ideas of government grocery stores because they're like, well, we don't even have a chance, right?
Yeah.
Don't you think that's part of it too?
That's definitely a huge part of it. And the other part of it is that they are not getting their political information from mainstream media. They're getting it from independent journalists. They're getting it through their phones without the kind of Team Blue and Team Red corporate programming telling them what to think. So that group is going to bail on him, and that's the group that if he loses, then there is no possibility of him winning.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, like,
please,
the reason that you're running as an independent, as a Green Party versus within the Democratic Party, is that it? So you're saying that if anybody runs within the Democratic machine, they're eventually going to turn into the corporate wing of the party, and there's no chance to actually reform that party. Similar, you could say that on the Republican side too. There's more like independent-minded, like Thomas Massey.
But you're not going to overpower MAGA, not with Trump at the top, right? You can't beat what the party has become, because the party is what the party is.
Unless there's a new, Trump, like, could Mamdani be the new?
Well, Mamdani can't be president because he's not native born. So there's a ceiling to how far he can go. AOC, has already lost the true, kind of progressive, she's becoming Nancy Pelosi.
Wait, you're calling her AOC.
AOC.
I just have to stop on that. I haven't heard that.
AOC Pelosi.
So that's your
So
your
you're
name for
saying
AOC.
she's morphing into.
Yeah, she's.
Okay.
Damn, what does her stock portfolio look like? Is she raking it?
No, she's not.
Hold on.
To her credit, I don't think she is raking it.
Not yet.
But her fundraising numbers, she's raised $18 million over the past.
AOC, I'm gonna steal that. I like
AOC
that.
Pelosi.
AOC
The holder for the land speed record of the fastest betrayal of working people. She literally was campaigning for Green Party candidates. And then as soon as she gets endorsed by the establishment wing of the Democrats, she was attacking me and Jill Stein on her little sorry videos, during the campaign.
Wow.
So that to the question, this is the crux of the matter. Let's take one of my principal competitors here in the state of California, Katie Porter. A lot of people are going to think of Katie Porter as a progressive, right?
But she has the whiteboards and she's
the
going
whiteboards.
after the corporate.
So here's one for you, Katie. I'm gonna do a whiteboard of all of the children that have been incinerated in Gaza since you made your I Stand With Israel video on October 11th, right? PEP, progressive except for Palestine. Every single one of those Dems has to get down with the genocidal imperialism of Team Blue. And make no mistake about it, this tension between Democrats and Republicans around foreign policy is rooted in something very, very significant, is that liberal imperialism is more dangerous internationally than the conservative iteration, because there's an isolationist tendency built into right-wing thinking. The right-wing fascism is the more present danger internally, domestically. But the libs never saw a war that they didn't want to profiteer off of. Right? And they will run us into World War III before any of them. Bernie Sanders, Michael Parenti, a great leftist thinker, said he parted company with Bernie Sanders in the 90s because Bernie Sanders endorsed Clinton's warmongering. Right? And just look at what the Democrat Party has done, with respect to, support for global U.S. imperialism. And why do we have 800 military bases? Well, the Katie Porters of the world, no matter how progressive you might look. And by the way, a policy like saying we're going to resolve the homelessness crisis in the state of California by building more housing, no, that's just more handouts to developers, which is what the Dems have been doing from the beginning. Right now, we have 20 open housing units for every person that's sleeping on the street in the state of California. What we need to do is to have a housing first policy. Everybody eats before anybody gets seconds.
Right.
Right. So people are just holding on to these properties, and a lot of them are now being held by BlackRock and these other investment firms. Tax the hell out of them, and then buy them for the state, and then refurbish those as affordable housing and as housing for people who are currently unhoused.
You're saying that right now there's enough units that exist to house everybody.
More than enough.
All this talk about like we need more housing, more housing, more
But
housing.
Those are just handouts to developers, James. That
And so
we have
those
more than enough
those
housing.
Institutions,
Yes.
that have been going around and buying the affordable housing. BlackRock has come out and done a press release and said, we're not doing it, but they are doing it because they're investing in REITs.
Of course they are. Yeah.
And, you know, these companies are going around, they're buying up 84,000 affordable homes, and then they can just make the rent whatever they want. You know, and then people are paying out of their ass for these rents, and then they can't, you know, save up to put a down payment on a house.
Well, and look at how the rental market has just spiked inside the state of California just in these past 5 years. Well, it's precisely because the Democrats in Sacramento have absolutely no intentions of biting the hand that feeds them. They are recipients of massive donor funds from those big developers. That's why their problems are always going to be solved by handing something out to private industry. That's what's meant by the term neoliberalism. It's not a reference to liberal versus conservative. Neoliberalism is an economic philosophy that Reagan essentially brought in, and both blue and red have been playing by those rules. Neoliberalism says that privatization is always going to make things more efficient. It was trickle-down economics, right? When corporations do well, everybody's going to do well. And so the Democrats now are a neoliberal party. They always give a cut to private enterprise, and they use private enterprise to take care of social problems. So we talked about this before, the homelessness crisis, right? $25 billion just in the last 5 years of our money as California taxpayers spent to resolve the homelessness crisis in the state. And we know.
And it's gone out of control.
It's gone up 32%, by the way, in the last
from 120,000 average per night in 2019 to an average now of 182,000 people sleeping on the street every night in a state that has 186 billionaires in it, that has more billionaires than any other state. Now, 25 billion of our money has essentially gone to NGOs and to developers rather than going to the people that are actually on the street. So we see this poverty industrial complex, the middlemen that take a cut off of the top from our tax dollars, and then they're going to buy up a Ramada Inn and turn it into a homeless shelter. But in the meantime, they're going to write themselves a $400,000 a year salary as the CEO, right? It's a massive grift. And the Democrats have been completely complicit in that. With that same money, you could have paid universal basic income for every homeless person in the state of California, $25,000 per person, including the children, and it would come out cheaper than the $25 billion we paid. That would literally put every single homeless person in the state of California above the national poverty threshold. Now, we know that's not the poverty threshold in California, because you can be broke making 75 grand in California for sure.
It's crazy. People try to say that that's not the case, but it's so expensive.
It's decidedly the case. But the point is that money would be better spent if it was going to actually meet the basic need rather than first having corporations or NGOs take a cut.
Well, so then the argument against what you're saying now from a political strategy standpoint is they would say, well, do you want fascism? Right? Because that's the other choice that people are saying. That's what they would say. It's like, oh, you're right? It's like, oh, if you don't vote for Katie Porter, oh, then you get some crazy dude. And and people are getting rounded up. Do you want that? That's what I think the Democrats would always go to, is that, well, yeah, that's not ideal that we just wasted $25 billion, but do you?
But Trump, but the other guys, and so that's the beauty of what's about to happen in this gubernatorial election. So that argument is going to be off the table for them for the following reason. So teams red and blue try to rig the system so that it's always a Democrat versus a Republican. And the Dems definitely want that in the state of California, because the Republicans not winning, any major election anytime soon.
In California?
In California, inside the state of California.
I think it's impossible.
It's not impossible, but it's implausible. And let me explain why.
Yeah, please.
So the reason is that in the state of California, there are actually as many registered independents as there are registered Republicans. The state leans that far, I don't want to say left, but that far liberal.
But most of the independents voted for Trump in the presidential election. So who's to say that they wouldn't vote red in the California?
Because they're not going to have the choice. So this is the thing, is that teams red and blue engineered it so that it would just be a jungle primary, only the top two advance. if it's a Green Party candidate sitting in that second position, then what is Team Blue going to say? They can't fearmonger about the Republicans coming to power. And what does it take to get to second place? In 2022, the second place finisher in the gubernatorial election got 17.7% of the vote. That there were 5.5 million votes cast. 1.29 million votes got them to second place. Get me 1.5 million votes, 1.7 million votes on June 2nd of 2026, and I'll break the Dems over my knee. I promise you. Because all of those independent and Republican voters will hear me banging on the corruption of the Democrats and saying, we don't have to do this BS culture war that they've been trying to stage to keep you guys divided, because everybody in this state wants health care. Everybody in this state wants affordable housing. Nobody in this state wants Gavin Newsom's buddies taking a cut off at the top of their tax dollars before any social services get delivered.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I don't think that it's out of the question, though, that a Republican could win in the state of California because of what a horrible job Gavin Newsom has done and Karen Bass in LA. And with this fire stuff continuing on, it's shined a big light on.
Well, they're gonna need better. They're gonna need better Republicans because
I mean, if Caitlyn Jenner,
Bianco or whatever his name is,
I mean, it'd have to be Caitlyn J. And
she ain't winning nothing. And I'll tell you this.
Yeah, what do you think about? I think she's a big Caitlyn Jenner fan.
No, I'm not a big No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. You know, I like reality TV. So if she enters the race, you know what I mean? Really, what are politics mostly? It's a big show. That's what it feels like to a lot of people.
All I know is this: Caitlyn Jenner, Katie Porter, Bianca, whatever, they do not want any part of me on a debate stage. My father was a locksmith with a 6th grade education. I got a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania. I've been teaching at the top research institutions, Northwestern University, University of Michigan, UCSB. They cannot see me on a debate stage. And when people have the case made to them in common sense terms, then they are going to realize that both Team Blue and Team Red have been hustling them. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. The relationship between those two parties is that one steals, the other holds the bag. They are partners in crime. And,
I agree with that. I mean, I think it's almost become team evil versus team good. And when and of course, just like with anything, right, there's always good people in everything. So I think there's a lot of politicians that are good, but then they get trapped up with the money and all of this. But I wanted to ask you with the Green Party, Green Party, because I don't know too much about it, but the earth and the environment is something that is a forefront, correct?
It's the beginning and the genesis of the Green Party.
And California is the most beautiful state. We have the most beautiful natural resources.
We have more, people who have kind of primary environmentalist and ecological, commitments than any other state. And in point of fact, we've elected more Greens to office than any other state by a wide margin. Yeah. So just for an example, we almost ended Lil Gavin Newsom's career before he got started.
Man, I wish that would have happened.
Man, wouldn't that have been nice? So if only we had a time machine to go back to San Francisco 2003. Well, so Matt Gonzalez, Green Party candidate for mayor in San Francisco, got 47% of the vote. Gavin Newsom just edged him out, and that would have ended Gavin's career before it even started. So California has elected Greens to all kinds of office. Mike Feinstein, mayor of Santa Monica, and we have elected Greens all throughout the state right now. The Green Party was founded on ecological principles.
That's why I wore green for you today, and I'm drinking a matcha.
Appreciate that. I left my green keffiyeh just because it clashed with the suit, and I felt like the suit was doing what it do. So I wanted to just leave. I wanted to leave it alone. And with the black tie and the glasses, like I was channeling Malcolm because I was hoping you might ask me to tell that story. But the point of this is that 40 years ago, the Green Party was founded, the U.S. Green Party was founded, McAllister College campus in the Twin Cities. I grew up in D.C., but Minneapolis, south side of Minneapolis, was actually my second hometown. Okay. My godmother, so I was raised mostly by a single mom, and my best friend was also raised by a single mom, indigenous woman named Annie Young. Annie Young was the first Green Party elected official in the state of Minnesota. She served from 1989 to 2018. And back then, when I was young, the Green Party was about green for the environment and green for the sticky icky, because they were they were team legalize it, right? Mm-hmm. At that time before that, they were team legalize it before that was kind of a nationwide movement. But what Annie Young taught me is that the Green Party doesn't have politicians; it has public servants. That the Green Party doesn't take any corporate money. The Green Party doesn't take any PAC money. You have to be a person to contribute. So we're not beholden to any interest. And so therefore we don't have to play politics. We can just do public service. So the Green Party has been not only like committed to that ecological sanity and like, because it would be good for us to have a planet to live on.
I mean, for sure, which I have a question about this.
Please.
So weather modification is becoming
HARP.
Yeah. I'm not even talking about, I'm not even going to go down that road, but just, you know.
No, HARP is a real thing, but go ahead.
No,
yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
You've probably seen my weather weapons video then, but.
I missed it. I need you to send it to me.
Okay,
Yeah,
I will. But in California, like in Orange County, for example, we have the Santa Ana River Watershed Weather Modification Program, right? Where they are modifying the weather by cloud seeding, where they are injecting silver iodine into our clouds to increase precipitation and make it rain, right? And for me, you know, I'm very against this. I don't understand how we're doing this in the name of climate change for the planet, but we're shooting a bunch of heavy metals into the clouds, messing with Mother Nature, with God, a lot of people would say, playing God. What do you think about this? Because this is a real problem.
If all you have is a hammer, then every problem is a nail. Okay. If all you have is corporate partnerships, then every single problem you are going to seek a corporate friendly solution. When corporations are the ones that are making the decision on how to intervene effectively for climate, they're thinking about what is going to provide the best returns and revenue for them. They're not thinking about what is going to provide environmental sustainability for us. And when you've had literally 60 years of Democrats running this state, it's been under Democrats that they, gave 80% of our water to the Resnicks. It's been under Democrats that we've seen PG&E start on average 400 plus fires per year and never be held responsible for the polluting consequences of those wildfires that are largely from their electrical equipment. And Gavin Newsom, with the stroke of a pen, literally transferred the debt from some of those damages from PG&E back to the taxpayers, right? So all of this is to say that we will never actually have ecological or environmental sanity inside the state if Democrats or Republicans are in charge. We're gonna need a green candidate. I mean, that's literally the first thing that we're about. It's at the top. It's the top line item. The second line item is justice, and ecological and environmental justice is also always social justice, because the pollution always goes through my neighborhood first, right? Elon Musk put his, plant in Memphis so that the wastewater is polluting the local water in the blackest of black communities. That those environmentally damaging decisions that eventually affect us all hit some of us first, right? We got lead in our water. We've got toxic waste dumps in our neighborhood. And that's
forever chemicals in our water, carcinogens in our water.
Correct. So the Green Party started as an ecological movement, but realized that as soon as you really pose ecological questions in an intelligent way, you are really dealing with like fundamental social liberation issues. Like, people have to have access to like employment that doesn't destroy the environment. Like, we got to shut down the coal plant because it's polluting and it's causing all kinds of health consequences for miners. Well, what are people going to do for work? Right? So you need to be providing like economic solutions for people. The state of California, we have so much abundance in this state. Like, people should not be suffering in a state that, if the United States were split into 50 independent republics, and at this rate,
it's headed towards that direction.
He said it. I left the pause just so you don't have me on record as the one that said that. For the record, I'm not yet advocating for California secession, but if they keep sending Gestapo troops, and kidnapping people off the streets, we might have to revisit that question.
So where are you at in the ICE? Because I wanted to ask you about ICE, because that's a conflicting issue for me, just because I don't support the idea of like mass unnamed police officers, plainclothes officers coming in and snatching people. But then I also have a fundamental issue with like illegal immigration. So then what would you say, like, how do you square those? Like, how do you convince somebody who maybe is like more conservative on that issue and say, hey, I think, we need to to close the border and things like that. But also, man, I'm kind of uncomfortable with this.
So if
kind
it
of
was
pulling
really
people off
if
the
it was
streets.
really about undocumented migrants, then those ICE raids, they would be pulling white dudes in business suits off of the farms, because who's hiring all of the undocumented laborers?
Good point. That's a good point. I grew up in junior high. My mom moved. She remarried in Camarillo, not far from you in Santa Barbara.
That's where I'll be for a campaign event tomorrow.
Okay,
Yep.
amazing. Can give a shout out to the Bass. That's what I call my mom, Big Mouth Mama Bass. She's gonna hate that I said that. Nancy.
We shouted her out on the
Anyways.
show, though, so that's good. Yeah.
I'm in so much trouble. Anyways, big agriculture community, right? And I went to school with a lot of kids, rode the bus with a lot of kids that their parents were
We're picking fruit.
every day picking. And they're good people and they're hard workers. And a lot of people would say the backbone
Of this state.
and of the food
Of course.
industry.
Nobody in America eats without that agricultural
And
labor.
so I am not for rounding up hardworking people.
It's insanity.
It doesn't make sense. And when Trump campaigned on this, to me, it was presented as a way of, we're going to go after the criminals. Because we know some criminals came across the border. Of course, when you get, just like I said, there's good people, there's bad people, some people. But it seems like, this is now just
So there's
Wild, Wild
there's a
West.
couple of things that need to be said. The first thing is that every single study shows that migrant labor is a net plus for the economy. Immigrants pay taxes, documented or undocumented, not just sales tax, but often income tax, and they help the tax base in a bunch of ways. The crime narrative is just plain white supremacy. I hate to say it, because immigrants commit crimes, especially violent crimes, at a much lower rate than born Americans, because America is the most violent society on the face of the planet.
Even if you have one immigrant rape a young girl in the country, that's going to be a bigger story because they're here illegally. So people
they're
will
here.
then
They're
use
they're
that.
here. They're here undocumented. White settlers came here illegally.
Or you're undocumented.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's just be clear. What Trump was doing was throwing red meat to his base.
Okay.
Because there is a kind of demonization of immigrants, which cannot be sustained, because the people that don't correspond to that stereotype.
Right.
I've been here for 7 years. I was blessed 6 years ago to meet a beautiful Mexican-American woman from Stockton. She's sitting in the other room right now.
Great.
Her mother still to this day picks cherries. To this day picks cherries. And my mother-in-law could not see her brother for 23 years because when she first came here, she came here undocumented. Now, she's since had her status stabilized. But that border was breaking up my wife's family the same way that families were broken up in my ancestors' time.
Mm-hmm.
People literally kept apart. Why? So that you can have a cheap, easily controllable source of labor. And this goes to the heart of the question. The reason why white boys in suits are not being carried out in those ICE raids is because Democrats and Republicans alike have been fueling the immigrant fear narrative, because it helps the corporations have cheap labor. They want people who are fragile, who do not have status. James and I talked about this in a previous conversation. I am all about stamping work permits, because most people actually don't want to stay. They have to stay because once they cross a border, they fear crossing back to the other side.
Stamp the work
permit.
So does that mean I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So would that mean if you're a farm worker, you've been here for 10 years, you're picking fruit, whatever, you immediately get citizenship?
A path to citizenship. Certainly.
The real
of course.
issue is that we don't have a better path to citizenship for these people.
Not only that, but also you have to realize that there's still going to be migrants that want to come for seasonal labor. A lot of people are not actually having the intention to stay. A lot of those are remittances that go back. People are taking the hard earnings from those farms and sending them back to Mexico and to other places. If people can come for seasonal labor and cross back to that border and spend, part of the season with their folks and come back and work, and you have some kind of legal status that allows laborers to organize themselves more effectively so they cannot be so easily exploited by those corporate interests, That's the kind of system that we need to be working towards in the state of California, a path to citizenship. And I look forward to, like, literally as governor of the state of California, to like having those conversations with Claudia Sheinbaum about like, how can we have better regional economic integration between Mexico and California? Because Mexico and California used to be all part of the same polity. And the reason why it never makes sense to refer to Mexican Americans as illegal immigrants is that 93% of Mexican Americans are of indigenous ancestry. Man, they from here. How can Europeans say that they are foreigners on lands that they have literally lived on for 20,000 years? Secondly, California, as we all know, literally used to be a part of Mexico. They did not cross the border crossed them. So we need to have a more rational and sane policy. And I'm telling you, neither Team Blue nor Team Red is talking to the Latino community on a basis of dignity and fairness. And that's why we're going to beat them, because the largest racial minority and ethnic minority in the state of California is white people.
Say that again.
The largest racial and ethnic minority in the state of California is white people.
So white
because
people
the
in California
less than 50%.
No, because
are the minorities.
the Latino population is 40% of the population. The white population is 34% of the population. The Asian American population, 12%. African American, 6%. So the point is that whoever messages about basic dignity and protection, not just of our civil liberties, because let's just be clear about this. When people can be kidnapped without due process, all of our civil liberties are in danger. Doesn't matter what you look like. If the government can start making you disappear and send you to a Venezuelan prison without having to provide any proof for why you're being held, that is incredibly dangerous. The first, and it will be our campaign. Our campaign has been messaging on this from the beginning. As governor of the state of California, I am not obeying any unconstitutional orders, which means that before ICE touches a single hair on the head of any California resident, they're going to have to go through every lawyer and law enforcement officer in the state of California, because LAPD, LA Sheriff's Department, Santa Ana, a bunch of municipalities have been caught with their hand in the cookie jar, cooperating with ICE, which is not what they're supposed to do. You are supposed to be able to call your local police department if somebody pulls up with a mask and a gun and tries to throw you in a van and will not identify themselves.
Yeah.
That is an extra legal abduction. You're supposed to be able to call the police for protection from that kind of thing. The police are not supposed to be facilitating that kind of thing. And that's precisely what they're doing right now.
So like, I hear you 100% there. I think for me, one thing that I just want to bring up is that, like, it's once again goes back to the red and blue situation, is that Obama was doing something very similar, maybe not at this scale and not with the same amount of like pomp and circumstance in terms of like the deportation.
Thank you for that.
And I made a video that was, I was kind of calling out, the unmasked or masked ICE agents coming in, rounding people up. And then I had people coming into me, well, you shouldn't have said the word illegal. You should have said undocumented, this and that. And I was kind of like, I don't think, so for me, like the language, I know you differentiated the language a little bit,
Sure.
But for me, it was like, I basically made a video that was like on your side. Now you're coming at me for saying the wrong word. And I'm like, what these people want probably isn't a differentiation between being called undocumented and illegal. They want
a path to citizenship and to stop getting
so why
kidnapped.
don't you do that in terms of the Democrat policies?
Well, I'm glad. Yeah. So there's a massive amount of hypocrisy when it is coming from Democrats, because so the numbers were very clear on this. From January, at least through March, at least through April, I have not checked the numbers since then. Despite all of the theatrics, Trump was actually trailing Joe Biden's deportation pace from 2024.
Interesting. So it's all over the news. It's all over the TV. But if you look at the actual numbers, Joe Biden's administration at this point had deported more. And wow.
And Biden,
I can't believe that.
And Biden was chasing the deportation records that had been set by Obama. Right.
So it went Obama, Biden, and Trump's third.
Exactly. So here's the issue, though, is that the optics of power, the theatrics of the two parties differs dramatically. Trump energizes his base by saying, we're going to get those dirty Browns out of your country. So he wants every single thing to be broadcast. That's why they're doing tours at Alligator Alcatraz, and that people are posing in front of cages the same way that they posed for pictures in front of lynchings in the 1830s. Like, white supremacy is very much a spectator sport. They like to get pictures, they like to have postcards about it, because it's about dominating certain people and turning America back into a white man's country. It's trying to give the optics of an ethnic cleansing. That's what Make America Great Again is about. Let's go back to the 50s when more people looked like us and spoke English. The Democrats have the exact opposite issue. They have to pretend that they are actually serving oppressed and marginalized and minority communities, when in point of fact, they actually serve the same corporate interests that the Republicans serve. They just can't be so public about the deportations. And that's why, a lot of, Black conservatives started following me after a Breakfast Club interview, because I'm not committed to either the foxes or the wolves. I'm going to bang on them both equally when they're in the wrong. And the policies do not differ dramatically. The optics do. The biggest difference, and it's important to stress this, is that the new budget extensions for ICE that have come in now, that will change the playing field, because essentially the budget that has now been allocated for ICE, depending on which I've seen two different numbers cited, it makes it either the 5th largest military organization or the 18th largest. And I know that's a big span, but either way, if your new secret police is one of the top 20 military budgets on the planet, you've got a serious problem coming. And they're now offering, signing bonuses. They're offering student debt relief. They're offering 6-figure salaries for all kinds of uneducated and untrained people to put on masks and start kidnapping their neighbors. And that is not about immigration. That is about the creation of a police state. And that is something that, I swear, if you think that it doesn't concern you because you are not Mexican American, wait till they're coming for you, because once a police state is rolling, all political dissidents, anyone that disagrees, anyone that speaks out.
On our episode that was released yesterday, when it comes to censorship, the UK,
the UK
is now putting all these censorship laws out there.
Palestine Action has been declared a terrorist organization, and people are literally getting jail time for saying Free Palestine. Yeah.
Yeah, so, it's a slippery slope when you start saying that, right? You can get people in by saying, oh, we're going to stop porn for 18-year-olds. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, you said this conspiracy theory. And by the way, I love putting on my tinfoil hat. So I've been banned many, many times on all the apps. And that's a problem, because I'm not saying anything harmful. I'm not saying anything hateful against anybody. I'm wondering why, all of a sudden the government's pushing this alien stuff, whatever it may be. Yep. But then they ban what I'm saying. So it is concerning, right? If you
there's a Simpsons episode that really speaks to this.
Well, there's a South Park episode last night about the ICE agents wearing the masks. So
they're
spot on that. Yeah. But yeah, it is a very slippery slope. I want to ask, because obviously I think we all would agree there's a lot wrong with this country and a lot of the way that, things are being run, and the red and the blue. But you are also running to be a leader of the largest economy in the United States. 100%. Do you love the United States of America?
I love the people of the United States of America. I cannot vouch for what this government has been doing to the people of the United States of America. You got to understand that my family, the Ware family, we go back to Ware Plantation in Ware County, Georgia. My ancestors came to what's the United States of America before there was a United States of America. And I have 2 grandfathers that served this country in its military, one white, one Black. Mm-hmm. Well, you don't have to guess which side of the family is buried at Arlington National Cemetery, now do you?
No.
Because they both served this country, but this country served them very differently in return. Mm-hmm. So what I love about the United States of America is the promise of representative democracy. What I love about the United States of America is the idea that we should be free from tyranny, that we should be free to live our life according to the code that we choose for our life, and that our neighbor should have the same, and that we should fight for the rights of our neighbor to live their life as they choose to live it, even if it's completely opposite from how the choices that we make. That freedom, I believe, is worth fighting and dying for. But that freedom is a freedom that has never been extended to my people. And so if you ask me, do I love the United States of America? I love a lot of the people in this country, and I love what this country could be. And I love what California could be. But the reality is that we will never get there until we actually face up to the massive inequalities that we have imposed on the people of this country, and
so
that we
that's why
can
you
do better.
want-
That's why I'm running.
Yeah.
That's why I'm running, because the reality is that the fruits of the United States of America, the fruits of the state of California should go to Californians. Like, we should actually be able to benefit. We pay in so much in state taxes. Shouldn't we have a state that serves us rather than millionaires? Shouldn't we have a state that serves us rather than billionaires? Shouldn't we get something for everything that we kick into the kitty?
I also feel like we shouldn't go against me personally, millionaires and billionaires, because I want to work my way up there one day, right? I want to live that American dream. For me, it's like, no matter who you are, no matter how much money you make, we should all be given the same opportunity, right?
I'll make a different distinction between millionaires and billionaires.
Yeah.
Millionaires, I'm 100% cool with. No,
Damn, I hope I don't hit it big. No,
I'm
just kidding.
100% cool with millionaires. There are very few ethical billionaires. Because of the structures have incentivized wildly unethical behavior. It is not okay that a bald guy with a phallic complex can blast himself into space while his employees have to pee.
I totally
have
agree
to
with you.
pee in cups
Yeah.
because they can't take a break. Something is broken when you get to
The
that
billionaire
to,
side.
to
I
that
agree
to that
with you,
to
because
that
it's
level.
like, it seems like every time they pass that threshold, I will agree with you in that sense that, you know, all of a sudden it's like Peter Thiel and I wants transhumanism. Bill Gates wants GMO seeds everywhere and to control the water. It does seem like they get a little power hungry or something weird happens. I don't know.
Well, all megalomania aside, it is indicative of a fundamental breakdown in the best things about American representative democracy. What it indicates is that you have had a full corporate takeover of all three branches of government, so that now there is no democracy. It's just a pure oligarchy. The wealthiest people make the decisions, and they make decisions. That's why just in the last 5 years, you know, since COVID, we've seen the wealth of billionaires in the United States double. In the last 5 years, like, it is a runaway train. Silicon Valley, right now, 9 households are holding $683 billion worth of wealth.
Gavin's so dirty. No, I'm just kidding.
Nine
Yeah, no, that's
households,
bad.
right? That's Zuck. That's a few other,
Yeah,
Silicon Valley folks. And you've got to understand that I am always going to be a fierce critic of runaway corporate capitalism, but I believe firmly in commerce. Business is good, and business has to be good, but business can't be good when that much money is tied up in private individuals. If that money was circulating amongst 10,000 millionaires instead of 9 billionaires, I don't know if I did the math right. We'll check that on the notes later. But the point is that that's money that's circulating in the economy. Whereas literally just what I want to say this was Gates and Bezos divorce settlements totaled something like $60 billion. That's money that could literally, that's larger than the municipal budget of 10 of the largest cities in the western half of the United States.
No,
like,
it is
they are
crazy.
holding money that the people could be using, and that money should be in circulation. And there's very simple things that you can do in the state of California to fix this, right? A 2% tax increase on those 186 billionaires would make it so that I can make the state of California a state where if you make $100,000 or less, you don't pay a penny of state taxes. Literally just raise the tax rate on those 186 billionaires by 2%, and everybody that's making 100K or less, no more state taxes. Like, they are holding so much of our money because they own the political system.
but
They
also,
own the
even as
media.
it is
So
right-
just an observation
Please.
based on some of the stuff that you're saying. This is like very like class centric kind
Sure.
of language that you're using, but you're also using a lot of race, kind of, what you talked
Well,
about. Maybe
I don't
10 minutes
believe in
before.
race, but
But
go
one
ahead.
is like very class. Maybe one you're talking about, hey, my family being black and
Sure,
having a
yes.
different experience. So then how do you? So because I think one of the big critiques of like the current politics is that we don't focus enough on the class. We focus a lot on these racial, cultural issues.
Mm-hmm.
So then, do you feel like there's a little bit of a risk if when you do speak about those like black issues, and ICE and things like that? Would you lose a percentage of people support and say, hey, are we in a post-racial? Like, do you think like there's some people who make an argument that says, well, we're in a post-racial environment here in America because there's no laws in the books that says, okay, black people or white people have different rules.
I've said what I just said, about my two grandfathers to the reddest of Trump Republicans, and no one has ever given me pushback because they know damn well which side of my family's buried at Arlington National, and they know damn well that Rudolph Ware Sr. and Robert Traynor were treated very, very differently, right? So I'll give an example just to kind of make this clear. One of my favorite moments during the 2024 presidential campaign, I was seated next to a white couple in their probably late 50s, early 60s, Jennifer and James Sweet, okay? And I had a keffiyeh around my neck, because it's Free Palestine all day, every day over here. And I hope we can work our way back to what Netanyahu is doing, in the last little bit of this interview. So Jennifer, I don't yet know her name, turns to me and says, "Is that a prayer rug?" And I said, well, I do be using it to pray sometimes because you never know if you're going to find a clean surface. I'm a practicing Muslim, so I got to find places to pray. But this is a keffiyeh to symbolize, solidarity with the Palestinian cause. And she said, oh, yeah, haven't they been fighting for thousands of years over there? And I said, well, that's what the media makes it sound like. But actually what happened is that after World War II, the Europeans really needed to make up for what they had done to the Jews in the Holocaust, but they were still super anti-Semitic. So they wanted them to have reparations, but they also wanted them the hell out of Europe. So they gave them land in Palestine and moved the Palestinians out. And the Palestinians have been fighting to get that land back ever since. And here's what she said to me. She said, that makes way more sense. Yeah. So then we strike up a conversation, and I asked who she's voting for, and she said, well, probably RFK. And I said, well, he's in with Trump now. And she turned to her husband. She said, did you know RFK is in with Trump now? And he was like, no. And he's like, well, I guess we're going to vote for Trump again. And I said, well, I happen to be the Green Party vice presidential candidate. And they're like, well, what's the Green Party? I said, well, how about I make my pitch? She said, go for it. And this is going somewhere. It's going to come right to the heart of your question. So I said, aren't you tired of Democrats calling you a racist?
Yes.
Aren't you tired of Democrats? And she laughed and she said, yeah. And I said, I don't think that all Trump voters are racist, not any more than your average Democrat voter. I think calling all Trump voters racist is just a bedtime story that liberals tell themselves so that they can feel good about themselves, because I've encountered both overt and covert racism from liberals as much as I've encountered it from conservatives. And I said to Jennifer, I said, now I know Trump's a racist. He says racist stuff all the time. He called Africa shithole countries. And she's like, yeah, he is racist. I said, but that still doesn't mean that all Trump voters are racist. She said, no, I don't have like any kind of hatred in my heart about anybody because of their color of their skin. I said, Jennifer, I believe you. And I believe that to be true. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Yeah. I said, here's what I believe about your average Trump voter. I believe your average Trump voter does not see a difference between blue criminals and red criminals, and all other things being equal, would rather pay lower taxes. And she laughed and she said, that's pretty much it. I said, well, Jennifer, what if I told you that we could lower your personal income tax with one small step? We stop taking money out of your pocket and handing it to weapons manufacturers after first using it to kill kids. That's when she tapped Steve into the conversation. And Steve, came in and I repeated what I said. And I said, not only that, I want to, with the same move, I can also lower your small business tax rate, because that's where a lot of our tax base is going. And I'm a small business owner. Why is Sam taking 35% off of the top of my small business to go murder kids in another country and risking American kids in foreign wars? It doesn't make any sense. He said, I know that's right. And I said, and I can create a better environment for you, because we used to have legal protections against all of these monopolies that make things so hard for your small business, because I believe in commerce. My grandfather, Rudolph Sr., who I mentioned before, started his own business multiple times, built successful businesses. He never would have gone in for the dependency politics of these Democrats. He was not that kind of man. So what I said was, remember we used to drive around the country, and every small town you would go to, you would plan out the stops because there would be this place that had the best butter pecan ice cream.
Yes.
Remember all of the little mom and pop
course,
shops, right?
Yes.
But now it's the same strip mall in every
Except
location.
now it's Starbucks.
Yeah.
Exactly. And why?
This, that.
Because we don't have protection, because the corporations own both parties and they give all of these breaks to the big corporations. They price the little guys out. They lower their price. As soon as the little guys are out of business, then they raise the prices, diminish the quality of the service. All you need is antitrust legislation, and I can create a better environment for your small business, because I believe we should have a bunch of millionaires, but I don't believe anybody should have 400 billion in their bank account. So we continued the conversation from there. They literally, their next move was to organize a Green Party rally in Flagstaff, Arizona, their predominantly white community. And when I was getting off of the plane, Steve said to me, he said, wait, we got to take a selfie. He said, you're going to be the first Muslim president of the United States of America.
Oh, I love that.
So this, literally in a 45-minute flight, a conversation that started about race, but turned to those class components. Because the thing is I don't believe the fairy tale that blue and red are divided along racist lines. I believe that white supremacy is in all of our structures. Even black people can be complicit with white supremacy. Kamala Harris was conducting a white supremacist genocide in Gaza. She doesn't get a break because she happens to be black. Obama was conducting white supremacist imperialist policies, bombing Yemeni kids with drones. He does not get a break because he's black. So when you start talking to the people in terms that are authentically rooted in your experience, but are about fairness for everybody, I've never gotten any pushback. And I've been teaching in lily white research universities for the last 20 years. I know how to talk to Americans that come from all kinds of backgrounds.
So how do you feel about somebody like Steve Bannon, who is very much rooted in this like economic message, right, about the working class? But you do get the white supremacy a little bit in there as well.
A little lot.
And so then do you partner with people like that in order to maybe get some of these economic policies more mainstreamed?
No, the same. Well, and it's for the same reason that you don't partner with genocidal Democrats. The goal is to message to the people that follow, not to try to turn the people that are in positions of leadership. Because I think that your average person that responds to a Steve Bannon message probably doesn't start out with a bunch of xenophobia and white supremacy in their head, but the xenophobia and white supremacy is mixed in with the working class messaging. I can just give you the working class messaging without giving you a bunch of racist dog whistles along the way. And if you go to my website, butchwareforgov.com, what it says at the bottom is solidarity beyond identity and ideology. I do not expect everybody to believe the way that I believe politically any more than I expect Muslim or Americans to believe in my personal faith choice. I'm not asking you to become Muslim. I'm not asking you to become a socialist or a Marxist. I'm not actually a Marxist in the way that I think about things or approach things. What I want to do is to craft policies that actually serve the people of the state. And that's how we're going to win. Because like I said, healthcare for all, that is a 70-30, 80-20 issue in the state of California. And it's not the Republicans that have stopped it. It's the Democrats that have stopped it.
Interesting.
They have kept that from happening over the last 20 years, whereas the polling is always there in favor of it. And right now,
yeah, I think you told me the story where back when Schwarzenegger was governor, the Democrats had a supermajority, so they passed universal health care in California because they knew that Schwarzenegger would veto it.
They knew that the Republican governor would veto it, so they could pretend that they wanted universal health care and pin turning it down on Schwarzenegger. Right. But then as soon as they took the governor's mansion back, it's been literally two decades.
Like, 2 or 3 votes short.
They can't. They're always 2 or 3 votes short. The same way that Manchin and Sinema are always just making it so that Biden couldn't do nothing. They're playing in our faces because they have no intentions of actually having people-focused policies. They are owned by corporations, but as I said before, they have to pretend like they're working for the people. Yeah. So all it has to say, just for one point on the healthcare, because I feel like this is important for people to understand. Right now in the state of California, taxpayers pay 70 cents on every healthcare dollar that's spent in the state. And right now in the state of California, 30% of the healthcare costs are for insurance companies that are their job is to deny you coverage. If you had single payer healthcare where the state was responsible for the healthcare and you cut out that 30% cut off of the top, with what we're currently paying in our taxes, we would cover universal healthcare in the state. But it goes back to that problem of neoliberalism, is that all of these solutions, some corporation has to take a cut off the top. And I have this crazy idea that yes, commerce should be good. People should have opportunities to make profit in their small businesses and even in big businesses. But what we shouldn't have is we shouldn't have people cashing in as corporations off of basic public necessities like healthcare, like housing. People should not be, having incentivizing profit extraction when it's standing in the way of people having basic needs met. And most people agree with those. Those are 70-30, 80-20 issues because they come around essentially to class issues. If we stay focused on the way that we serve people and understanding that I'm going to speak my truth because that's who I am, but I want you to speak your truth and I want you to speak your truth. And I want to create a society where we all feel free to live out our own truth, express who we are. That's what's worth fighting for in America.
For sure.
That's what's worth fighting for.
I agree. And with the healthcare stuff, it's interesting because I'm a big person focused on what I eat, what I drink, what I put in my temple, right?
100%.
And that's really the crux of a lot of our healthcare issues. And when you look at people that are on food stamps, for example, they're primarily buying processed chemical foods. They're buying sodas, things that we know are going to lead to diabetes, liver issues, infertility issues have been linked a lot with this kind of stuff. And obviously that food is created by big corporations. How do we, deal with the root of the issue when it comes to the food? And
that's a good question because I think, have you posted on the Snap because they're trying to take away Snap for or say you can't buy certain
soda, for example. And I think
you disagreed with that, right?
I didn't post about that specifically, but again, this is returning to the same to the same issue. Is that when all of your decision makers are owned by the corporations, then they're going to frame the problem as one that is being created by the consumers rather than by the corporations. Who is regulating the 1,000,001 ways which they have weaponized corn syrup, right, in order to create a diabetes epidemic?
It's disgusting.
And that's that neoliberal turn that I referred to before, because Ronald Reagan told us we're going to have trickle down economics and the government's in the way and we got to deregulate and let companies do business. And now you essentially have the fox guarding the hen house, because the people that are responsible for creating a lot of the regulations in these industries are literally they're going from that industry to lobbying and then back into the industry, right? That's that lobbyist.
Or some of the
corporate
pharmaceutical
pipeline
companies own the GMO seeds.
Exactly.
And it's even worse.
So I'm 1,000% for actually having regulations, and I can tell you that you can tether together these policies in ways that serve people in California. So you mentioned Zoran's, idea about city-owned groceries. Well, I posted about this a year ago.
You like that idea?
State-owned groceries in every county in California. And here's the reason why. People don't know that we actually used to have state-owned grocery stores during the Great Depression.
Have you seen the one that is in Kansas City?
I have not seen the one that's in Kansas City.
There's no food on the shelves.
I mean, that's absurd because in the state of California, we produce, 70% of the fresh fruits and vegetables that are consumed throughout the country. So why do we have food deserts? Not just in, places like, Crenshaw and Slauson, in South Central LA, where I do a lot of my community work with ISLA, but also paradoxically in rural communities, we also have food deserts. Why not have in every single county a state-run grocery store that is farm to table, working with those local family farms rather than the agro businesses, and that is run as a workers cooperative rather than as as a for-profit business? Because then if it's a workers cooperative, that is going to naturally serve to keep prices down, and it's going to employ Californians. It's going to help those local farmers, especially those that farm organic produce. There's ways that if you're not beholden to first letting the corporations eat before anybody else eats, then you can craft policy solutions that are going to serve multiple
I think
communities.
the problem is the government's making sure that their friends are eating before everybody else, because you have a lot of money going towards the homeless problem, but the homeless problem's not fixed. So I have to say, like, I don't believe that government grocery stores are going to solve anything.
If Democrats are in charge, they won't. I promise you they won't, because
you know what I mean? Like, I'm just thinking, like, in theory it sounds great, but then every time it's played out, there's no food on the shelves.
Right. And the reason is what I said. The corruption is baked into the Democrat model, because the Democrat Party is run essentially as a mafia organization. It is a series of patron-client relationships. So the state serves as, a patron to certain clients, and then the state also serves as the client of certain mega corporations. The whole thing is done through a series of handshake deals in back rooms. And that's why, as much as I was opposed to Elon Musk and his Doge, program, I mean, because, like, it's wild that a guy, that's worth $400 billion would be taking your grandmama's Social Security check away. Like, that's a different kind of crazy. But I understood why people responded to that call, because there is so much grift and corruption and waste in the system. It's just that replacing it with a different kind of grift and corruption and waste. And this is the argument for the Green Party, right? Is that we don't take any corporate donations. We don't take any PAC donations. Nobody owns me. So it's
like me and James with this show. Like, we purposely made sure we own the podcast, because we didn't want anybody to influence our voices. And it happens all the time. It's crazy.
It happens all the time. And the biggest place that you see it, and just because I want to make sure that we get back here, is with how despite what, there's a certain element of the right-wing base that is now, like, super, super critical about, like, they're basically like the U.S. is Israel's, right? That's what they're saying. Like, that's their argument. And on the left side of the political spectrum, a lot of us that are anti-imperialists for a long time have been saying, like, free Palestine, right? Well, neither the Democrats nor the Republicans at the top of their institutional ladders can respond to either of those calls from their base, because they are owned lock, stock, and two smoking barrels by AIPAC. And they are completely complicit in every single thing that Israel does. If Israel says jump, they say how high. And so what you're seeing now is that, like, Netanyahu is desperate to, like, now accelerate the full takeover of Gaza. And I'm going to tell you why he's doing it. Yes, they've always wanted to have it, but it is no longer a matter of their realization of the dream of a greater Israel. They are actually fighting for the survival of the Zionist entity, because if he wants custody of the crime scene, if international observers ever go into Gaza, they're going to find an Auschwitz on every block.
But do they even have to go there to see that? Or it's kind of like turning a blind eye?
I'm telling you right now that we have seen documentation, we've watched it on our phones, when people are actually able to carefully study and look at what has happened on the ground. They keep throwing around the number 60,000, but if you look at the population-based estimates, it's going to be 500,000 people slaughtered in 2 years.
And this has become such a big issue, but what about other places around the world where people are being killed? Why do you think this is a bigger issue than?
It's an old-fashioned version of settler colonialism. It's the same settler colonialism that decimated the indigenous Native American population. It's barbaric. Everybody understands that if I come into your home, hit you over the head, and take your stuff, I've done something unspeakable. And that is what the Zionist entity is. It's people from another place coming into historic Palestine, hitting people over the head and taking their stuff. And so it dramatizes in very concrete terms what more subtle and covert forms of American imperialism do in other places. Like, we've been responsible for no less than, I think the number is 108 coups since World War II around the world. We are responsible for systematically destabilizing all kinds of countries just in order to extract a resource from that place for 10 cents cheaper than we might have, without that destabilization. But what Gaza has revealed is the logic that's underneath all of that imperial adventurism. And I think that what's happening is that Zionism is suffering its extinction burst. It is not going to survive much longer.
You don't think so?
No.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I wanted to bring up in terms
Please.
of the language or in terms of what we're seeing on social media, right? What I find really odd, and this is maybe a good question for your coalition building and how you're going to achieve 1.7 million votes in California, is that like I see creators a lot of times, they'll get really mad at, let's say, the Sydney Sweeney being a Nazi, or they'll even call like Hassan Piker, like he was talking recently about people calling him out for being a body fascist because he looks really good and we should accept all people.
First
but
of all,
then these creators also won't speak on the Gaza issue for whatever reason. So I'm like, what is happening here? And how do you kind of bridge the gap to say, hey, maybe we can find some kind of commonality? What's your strategy there?
Well, I mean, so there's a couple of different things going on. I mean, first of all, the Sydney Sweeney thing.
Like, is she a Nazi?
Is she a Nazi?
Or is
no,
that was that ad a Nazi?
I don't think she's a Nazi, but
was that ad a Nazi?
Okay, so it's like Caitlin Clark, right? Caitlin Clark, WNBA. She understands that she has become like the poster girl for a certain group of kind of white supremacists, right? Because she's the white woman playing basketball and doing certain things. And she doesn't distance herself from that, despite the fact that she knows that that's going on.
I've never heard that. I just heard that she was good.
She is good,
and
she
was
is
white,
good.
and so she became.
Yeah, but it becomes part of like a race and culture war, right? Those.
And why does that always have to happen?
Because those Aryan types are always looking for a hero. Let's just be clear about that.
Okay.
Like they're always looking for a hero. So it's been known for some time that Sydney Sweeney has been a darling of the alt-right. So if you know that you're a darling of the alt-right and then you make that kind of ad, it doesn't mean that you're a Nazi, but it means that you're okay with some Nazis fangirling about you and you don't distance yourself from it. And I'll believe that American Eagle wasn't doing Nazi stuff when they have a black model.
They do have.
But they do. They
do.
did before.
Wearing black jeans.
Oh, and saying
my jeans are black. When I see that, then I'll believe that there was no Nazi eugenics that was coded into it. Because if you look at the way that Nazi propaganda did function, Nazi propaganda was always seeking out these Aryan archetypes and trying to model a certain kind of cultural normativity. And what's happening is that the media space under Trump and the advertising space under Trump is saying, go woke, go broke. They're leaning now in to a particular kind of body normativity that is related to, like white as the beauty standard again. And that is going to bring you dangerously close to some Nazi ideas, even if you don't believe that that was the intentionality behind the piece.
I mean, I think you kind of lose the coalition though when you have this kind of exclusive thing. If you're not with us on this issue, if you don't call Sydney Sweeney,
I agree. I don't think anybody should be saying you don't have the right to have an alternative take. Like you haven't heard me coming at you saying like you have to think what I think about it.
Maybe that's what differentiates you from maybe the Democrats a little bit.
Well,
right?
but that's what differentiates the Green Party across the board, because we have not been invested in a staged culture war that is designed to keep you divided while we take away your rights and all of the money out of your pockets, which is what Team Blue and Team Red are invested in. They want us arguing with each other about things that are none of our damn business. How you pray, who you lay with, those things are not the state's business. Do you. The job of public servants is to create a space where everybody has the freedom and the liberty to live their life in the way that makes the most sense to them without causing harm to others. And that's what the Green Party stands for, decentralized democracy. The way that Green Party politics function in one community as opposed to another is going to be different based on the constituencies inside that community. It's not a cult and it's not an ideology. I'm not trying to persuade you to think that I
haven't heard you say that, like when the Sydney Sweeney thing was real hot, like a couple weeks ago, you didn't come out necessarily with this message to say, I don't care. Like this is a manufactured culture war thing. We need to focus.
Like a psyop.
Yeah, exactly. Right, because then I feel like that's where you start to lose people, especially on the left. I think the Green Party gets lumped in with the left.
I just chose not to speak on it because I feel like the more than anything that we say, what we choose to speak on reveals to others what our priorities are. And so that's why you don't hear me speaking on culture war topics, because I
don't
honestly
want to be involved in it.
No,
but do you think that's
it's
a good
more than that. I don't give a good goddamn. Like I really do not think that like playing into the culture war like helps us get our elected officials to actually work for us instead of the corporations. And then, did we lose a mic? Okay.
Oh. But isn't that an opportunity? Because those are the type of things that get normie Americans involved in these kind of political issues, right? Because a lot of people aren't really paying attention to the ins and outs of everyday politics.
I don't think that's a political issue.
No, I'm saying that is something.
Human issue.
That is a story that breaks the internet world. Like it breaks outside of just like people on the internet. Like normal people will have heard of that.
But
so
in a way,
don't you want to inject your opinion into that?
I will definitely take that as a useful note to reflect on. My instinct is so we used to say back home, if you get to tussling on the ground with a fool, people won't be able to tell between the two of you. Another version of it is if you wrestle in the slop with a pig, you're both going to end up filthy, but the pig is going to like it. So my point is that I'm not going to condescend to getting involved in the culture war, because we're actually supposed to be doing service. Now, if it's something that I think is actually productive of like dangerous outcomes, that's where I'm going to, intervene. Like, I before I was ever, called into politics, I made a post when really it was only Muslims and Black Muslims, Muslim community and the Black community that knew who I was because of my scholarship and teaching and stuff. I made a post about like anti-LGBTQ sentiment inside the Muslim community. And it wasn't because I wanted to advocate for anybody's identity or anything like that. It was just simply that contributing to rhetoric that was going to end up with trans women being beaten to death.
Right.
That's insane. So at that point in time, this thing that could be framed as a culture war issue is not a culture war issue anymore. Like this is a basic compassion and like public safety issue, and like certain kinds of rhetoric produce dangerous outcomes. So if I feel like that it's something that needs to be spoken on because it's reached that level, but Sydney Sweeney's little Sorry Jean commercial, I didn't really think, I think it was all serious. Now, much more importantly is this Hassan Piker piece. And let me look back to the camera again.
Did you see that piece, by the way? You talked about him being attacked for being a body fascist or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I made a post, and had some people, make similar things, because I was once over 330 pounds, and I lost 110 pounds of body fat, gained 10 pounds of muscle at age 45, right?
Wow.
And currently at age 51, like last year at age 50, I set personal best. I did 200.
You look good for 51. I would have never known.
I've seen your gym videos. You're jacked, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, don't make me pop out of the suit, but 225 for 30 repetitions, 500 pound squat, 225 for 30 reps on the bench is like combine numbers, NFL combines for D tackles. And I post the fitness content precisely because there really is a fitness to fascist pipeline, right? That a lot of the fitness content online leans heavily right and channels people into a bunch of misogynistic content. And so Hassan Piker, as somebody who's situated as a leftist, but also works out and stuff, he gets associated with that. But I don't think that he's ever done anything that was toxic about. And I said in my post, I said, for me, fitness isn't about cultivating a certain kind of aesthetic. It's about making the strongest, healthiest version of you, whatever your disability status is, whatever your gender is. It's about finding your strength, and that's a different kind of message. And I do think that so-called leftists should be thinking about how to reclaim that space, because you shouldn't, like, there are people that have done studies that show that like when a teenager subscribes to like masculine oriented workout content, like literally within a couple of hours, their algorithm will be spitting white supremacist stuff into their Like, it's that bad.
Just look at and then I know, to be cautious of your time, we got to go. But when you look at the most successful people in the world, CEOs of these big companies, you know, they all have a very similar routine, whether they're on the right or the left, and it's waking up, working out, treating their body right. And so that's really a message for everybody. I don't know why that would ever be anything else.
It should be. But you know, the people that have dominated the space have been, you know, like Andrew Tate's and, you know, Joe Rogan.
You gotta get your fitness stuff more.
Listen,
I'm trying. Break out of those suits more often.
Jake, I told Joe Rogan, you know, like bench press competition anytime. Jake Paul, you know, same standing offer. I mean, you know, nobody on the right has taken up that challenge yet. You know, arm wrestling, whatever it is, like bring us to the feats of strength. And I will just say about that, like my day starts the same, you know, every day. My day starts with, you know, my morning prayer, my coffee, and my workout. And, you know, like, and then, you know, the day begins. And, you know, the discipline, you know, that was required to lose those 110 pounds and to, you know, kind of create new habits. That's something I try to bring into everything, right? You know, like we want to excel in all aspects of our life, and we want to find out what we're made of, you know, like, so I feel like, you know, intellectually, spiritually, politically, you know, it's all about, I'm a person of faith. Find out what God made when God made you. Right. And you won't know that until you've tested your limits, until you've, you know, seen what you can achieve. Sure. Yeah.
Life's not easy. So when you start off the day like that, you feel like, okay, I've already overcome something. So I'm kind of ready.
Well, final minute here. So I just want to give you an opportunity. No, just to give you an opportunity to, you know, tell the world like where they can find more information about the Green Party. What does the Green Party stand for? How do they support you? How do they find out who Butch Ware is?
So, you know, proud to have accepted the endorsement of the California Green Party. But I will also want to make it clear that we're running a campaign like no Green Party candidate has ever run. Our goal is to not just go after environmentalists or people that see themselves as leftists. Our goal is to serve the state of California and to give the people an option that is neither team blue genocide or team red fascism. And the American people across the board know that we need an independent third party that isn't corporate owned. The polling says this, 63% of voters say that the two parties do such a, quote, poor job that we need an independent third party. When you break it down by voter registration, 70% of independents say that, 53% of registered Democrats and 48% of registered Republicans. Everybody knows that teams blue and red suck, right? And that what we need is an independent, not corporate-owned option. The Green Party is the third largest political party in the United States of America. We have electoral access across the country. We've elected more Greens than any other state, and we actually have a chance to vote for policies that serve all of us. The idea, and what I'm asking the state of California to consider is, let's build together California that works for all of us instead of just for a few people at the top. And that doesn't require you sharing every aspect of my political philosophy. It just requires us working together in solidarity to return the power back to the people rather than having it sitting in the hands of the corporations.
Well, and what better person than you to lead that? You're the real American dream, right? You said your dad was a locksmith.
It's true, yeah. God rest his soul.
You've really just accomplished so much in your life. It was just such an honor to speak to you.
Sister girl, we just getting started.
And hear your story. So I know we could have definitely gone on.
We just getting started. And the story's just getting started because listen, I mean, I'll say this. I know we can win because I've already overcome longer odds than this election.
Right.
Number one. And number two, this election isn't about me. Like, ask anybody that's known me. I've never thought about seeking elected office until Dr. Jill asked me to run as a VP.
Do you feel like you were called to this from a higher power?
When called into action, you serve. And the thing is that I realized that because of how I've lived my life, that that hopefully I can talk to people in a way that will help them understand that we're bigger than this and that we're better than this and that we can have better governance than this. We don't have to settle for this, and we don't have to argue with each other about such petty things when like there's life and death business that needs to be transacted, because California is a beautiful place, and it should be a beautiful place to live for everybody. It should be livable. It should be affordable. We should have been had high-speed trains if it wasn't for the grift in that in that administration. Like, and we can actually have those things. We don't have to settle for this trash. We really don't.
Well, thank you so much, Butch, for being our first guest on our show.
My pleasure.
I love that.
So thank you for coming down here. And if you want to see more interviews with people like Butch, definitely hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
And again,
thank
one last time, where can they find you?
Yeah, where can they find you?
ButchWareForGov.com. Volunteer if you're too broke to donate. Volunteer, and yeah, definitely support us there. And we're constantly providing new content on the website, so check us out.
Amazing.
Thanks, Butch.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
My pleasure. Thank you
you
so
so
much.
much.
That was a
That was
great time,
amazing.
guys. Yeah, enjoyed it.